Yeah, I'm going to talk today about food and feelings. I had a really old video I had shot back from like 2021 that was long overdue for an update. So um, this is for folks that really have a strong connection between food and emotions. And this is not everyone who comes to me, right? Some people come to me and they're like, I don't care what my meal plan is. Like, tell me to eat insects or like dog poop. I don't care. I'll eat it. I just want to recover, right? Those people have a much easier time. It's like, right? People are just like, I don't care anymore. Just whatever. I'll do whatever. But that's not everyone. And it's not that the people I'm talking about like don't want to heal as badly. They do. But there's a lot more like complex emotional relationships with food that they need to grapple with. So a lot of times people like this were raised to really see food as reward, right? Or food as comfort, or food as celebration, or food as a way to cope with emotion, right? So, and this isn't even counting like the diet culture, the weight loss, all of that. That's a whole different can of worms. I mean, it's connected, but I'm not going to really talk about that today. I have other videos about eating disorders and restrictive eating and things like that. This is more about just someone who maybe doesn't have a full-blown eating disorder, but has just had a long history of really a lot of emotional entanglement with food, right? So I'm going to talk about kind of each of these situations and how we need to rethink it, because the reality is, unfortunately, the sicker you are, the more intentional you need to be with your diet in order to heal. And this is not forever. This is not like super long term. For the most part, I mean, I don't recommend that any of my clients go back to eating processed food like pizza, ice cream, hot dogs, stuff like that, right? But within whole foods, like reasonable parameters, most of my clients are able to really expand their diet in the long term if they do the hard work and they do that strategic restriction in the short term, right? So part of this is like, if you recognize it as it's a short-term thing, sometimes it's easier, right? Like, okay, I know this is not going to be forever. I'm just doing this now to help support my recovery. But my protocols are pretty intense, right? And that's why people come to me, because they've done generic elimination diets, like they've done kind of AIP or other kind of basic protocols, and they don't get results, right? And so my protocols are like very specific, and they are very strict, and the recipes are very specific. So if you come work with me, you'll get one of those protocols, and you have to really be ready for it. This is part of the reason we have people apply for our intensive coaching, is because we want you to be really ready to do that hard work. But some people, they're like, yeah, totally, I'm ready. And then they actually start doing it, and they're like, oh, I have some baggage around food I didn't realize I had. Or maybe they don't sign up for our program because they're like, I want to heal, I want to do it. I know this probably is going to work for me, but I can't emotionally like manage, what this program is going to entail. So this is for you guys. And I want to say that everything you learned about food, you can unlearn. It's not easy, but it is possible. So if you learn to associate food with reward, right, or celebration, you can relearn that. And something that helped me very early on when I was just starting to heal, my diet was incredibly restrictive and monotonous, you guys. Like, I did all these protocols too, right? So I'm not making you do something I didn't do. Like, I did all this, right? So I get it for long periods of time. So I get it. But I was really just like, because I couldn't tolerate any supplements, like medications, right? Like, I was very sensitive, and a lot of folks that kind of work with me are too. But even if you're on some supplements, really trying to have the mentality of like, this is my medicine. Like, this is fueling my cells. This is the raw materials that my cells need to heal, right? Every bite I take is healing my tissues, is feeding my nervous system, is feeding my immune system, right? Is nourishing me. If you can just reframe food as not something that you reward yourself with, not something that you comfort yourself with, not something that you celebrate with, but literally just the baseline fuel for your recovery. That can be really helpful. And you know what started happening for me? When I just took away the need to like enjoy my food or celebrate my food or feel like I had a reward with what I was eating, and I was just like monotonously like, this is my medicine, this is my medicine. All of a sudden, my food started tasting amazing. And once I really let my palate reset and I just really stuck to it, just put my head down and like, this is what I eat every day, this is just what I do. And like, it just was like a routine. Suddenly it was like, oh my gosh, vegetables taste amazing. Like, wow, this meat that like literally is only seasoned with salt, like amazing. It tastes so good. Like when you take away the noise, your palate resets and suddenly like your body can feel that nourishment, because a lot of us have been totally hijacked by the additives and flavorings and preservatives in processed foods. Even the natural processed foods that you get at Trader Joe's or whatever, they still have all those flavorings and additives that are invented in labs to hijack our palate so that we crave those foods, and whole foods no longer seem satisfying, right? Our biology is getting hijacked and it's not okay, and we can take our power back and reset that, but we have to really put our head down and let that process happen, right? The other thing I would say is like, really start to pay attention to how to use food as a coping skill, right? Because people all the time turn to food because they want to feel something else, right? And I've worked with people with histories of binge eating that become aware of these patterns as we're working together, and they're like, oh my gosh, I felt as I was like eating the chips how my emotions just like dampened. Like you're using the food to dampen your emotions, to cope with your emotions. And that is something that once you're aware of, it can still be hard to change, but that's the first step, right? You have to realize like, oh my gosh, I'm reaching for the chips because I don't want to feel this feeling right now, right? And I'm not asking you to just like grit your fingers and just like push through it. Like we all need coping skills. We all need ways to manage our feelings and to cope with our feelings. Like sometimes emotions can be so uncomfortable to feel. And ideally, we do want to learn how to tolerate the feelings, but we also do need just like relief and comfort sometimes. So the good news is taste is one of 5 senses. So we can use our other 5 senses to find comfort sometimes. And that actually will help with our nervous system regulation overall if we're very intentional with the sounds and the smells and the sights, right? And the textures. Like if we're really intentional about the other senses that we have and like putting in comforting stimuli, it can make a huge difference, right? And, you know, sometimes if people are craving like starchy, carby stuff, you know, from like an Ayurvedic perspective, for example, like that's a need for more grounding. Like a lot of those vegetables, like the root vegetable, you're craving like potatoes, right? It's like wheat, you know, some of these very earthy, like grains and roots, right? It's these very earthy foods, and grounding skills can be a great antidote to that. And as well as like with sweetness, you have to think about this metaphorically too. Like a lot of times we're lacking sweetness and gentleness in our lives. We live these high stress lifestyles. We avoid intimacy, you know, we push away pleasure, and then we like gobble up the candy, right? So we need to really think about, where are we getting sweetness in our lives? If we need to put it away in our diet for a while, like we can do substitutes, right? And that can be so, so helpful. So looking at how you're using food as a comfort, rethinking what food is for, and like thinking outside the box. Like so often people come to me and they're like, well, I can't eat dinner with my family anymore. We're like, well, I can't go out with friends anymore, or I can't have friends over anymore. It's like, why? There's no reason why you can't have dinner with your family or your friends or go out. Just, you're going to have to adjust the way you do it, right? Like you're probably going to have to bring your own food, or you're going to have to eat before. If you don't want to answer questions about what you're doing, you don't have to. You just say like, oh, I'm just trying a certain diet for a few months, you know, and then change the subject. Like, it's not a big deal. You don't have to get into it. And if someone is talking about it and you don't want to talk about it, like, you can change. You're like, I don't really want to talk about it. Let's like, you know, let's talk about something else. Or, yeah, you can do that. It's okay. You do have to have some amount of like competence and self-assuredness, but we can work on that. That's something we can work on. So you don't have to isolate yourself, right? You don't have to just power through it without other coping skills, but you do have to decide what your goals are. Because again, the sicker you are, the more intentional you're gonna have to be with your diet and the more restrictive you're gonna have to be to heal. And there are some ways of thinking about your food that are gonna help that, and certain ones that are gonna sabotage you. I will also say, for people who begrudgingly change their diet and they tell me like, yeah, I'm eating the diet, like I'm being perfectly compliant, but I hate it. I hate every meal, I hate every bite. I'm not trying to make fun of anybody by doing that, but I do hear that. And honestly, those are the people that I don't see make progress. So you don't have to love your food. You can see your food neutrally. You can be like, this is what I did too, and it worked for me. It's just medicine. It's just fuel. This is just my medicine. This is just what I eat. It's just my fuel. But if you have contempt for what you're doing, resentment or bitterness for what you're doing, you are not going to reap any of the benefits of that food. Like, honestly, it'd be better for you to just wait and try it again when you can wrap your head around at least feeling neutral about your food. Okay. I hope this video was helpful. I would be very curious in the comments to see how people have reframed their own relationship with food and emotions. And let me know if there's any other video topics that you guys want to see me